A quick addendum to my previous comment, so I can hang some meat on the bones of the argument and put my money where my mouth is. And it's a bit Brob's people, so maybe it's fun. I suggested that in the kind of logical dilemmas that Milton's presenting and ultimately undermining, I suggested that trying to deduce the correct moral or existential thing in any given dilemma is basically impossible and unhelpful for the reasons that Milton lays out. And what's more important is that whatever we do it from love. I gave the example of eating animals versus giving them rights. Now, for me personally, I don't think it's right for me to eat animals. But I do because I'm weak. But if you gave me this like classic modern devilish black and white dilemma tomorrow of shall we start arresting people who eat animals versus shall we have the status quo, it would be a very hard decision for me that I'm not sure has necessarily a totally right answer. I would probably, because I'm quite liberal, I'd probably lean towards out of those two extremes, let's keep the status quo. So that's an impossible dilemma for me to deductively solve. But what makes it easy for me is saying, I'm not so worried which way we go. I'm more worried that we do it with love and understanding and consideration. If we're going to keep eating animals, then I think we should be, maybe gradually but firmly, moving towards a world where those animals have the best possible lives that we can give them. I think that's a no-brainer. And if that means that meat becomes unaffordable for the least wealthy in our societies, then I think there should be provision to ensure that they can still get and enjoy meat. So socialism, basically. And if we're going to outlaw eating animals, then I don't think we should start tomorrow by throwing people in jail who eat animals. I think, again, it has to be a gradual, considered, understanding thing where we recognize that a hell of a lot of people in this world have entire cultures and traditions and value systems built around eating animals. That there are still uncontacted tribes who would not survive without eating animals. And I think it'd be ridiculous to be absolute about such a thing. So what I'm trying to suggest is that the way the devil works in our society is to give us this impossible choice between these two black and white extremes of punish people that eat animals versus do whatever you like to animals and it doesn't matter. That's an impossible choice, and Milton shows us that there's no logically correct answer. But when you give me the choice of the kind, loving, understanding implementation of either, it's an easy choice. They're both wonderful. So if you take one thing from me ever, please make it this. Please let's put less energy into fighting one another over what's right and more energy into cooperating with one another to do whatever we do with love and understanding.
there's no time. Just not enough time. We're trying to build the future out of old video game code and half-finished research projects. We should have had years, maybe decades, with the kind of money they used to put into building bombs. If I stop and think about how crazy this is, I will have a nervous breakdown. So I won't. Yep, okay, back to work, Alex.
And so it is done. You have overcome each trial that I set before you. You have shown faith and wisdom and perseverance. Therefore I judge you worthy, and I say unto you, come to the gates of eternity, where you shall be granted everlasting life. Come forward, child. Eternity awaits. Rejoice, my child, as you leave this world behind. For all that you accomplished shall be passed on to your generations. In this land they shall thrive, and you shall be remembered as the beloved servant of Elohim. And so death shall have no dominion over you. Be well, my child. Be at peace. Behold, child, you are risen from the dust, and you walk in my garden. Hear now my voice, and know that I am your maker, and I am called Elohim. Your faith has guided you well, my child. You have overcome every trial in this land and gathered all the sigils.
site photo sessions that we took in Italy, France, Egypt, and Croatia, we went out and captured tens of thousands of images of walls, statues, stones, and various real-life objects, all with the goal of later transforming those photos into highly detailed 3D models through a technique called photogrammetry. Us being pioneers of this technique, we early recognized its potential to deliver unparalleled detail and realism. Actually, the technique is able to use many photos of an object and then extract precise geometry and also generate seamlessly aligned textures from the captured photos. By using this technique, we were able to generate high visual fidelity in our in-game models. And we feel that this dedication to detail added depth to the environments and increased the immersiveness of the game's world.
Okay, so I don't actually remember who came up with the idea for the QR codes, which the iterations used to communicate with each other. Tom wrote most of these. I did write some of them. I think one of my contributions is the character whose name is the @ symbol. He's an explorer, and the name is actually a reference to the player character in old roguelikes, who used to be, in the shape of an @ the player character. So the other iterations of the AI are another part of sort of a big theme in the game, which is our place as individuals in the history.
Hello, my name is Tom Joubert, and I was one of the 2 narrative designers on the game before you. I was primarily responsible for writing Milton, as well as top-level plot design, and a bunch of the graffitis that you find around the game. So the basic structure of these commentaries is I'm going to say a bit about particular Milton dialogues and the kind of philosophy and design behind them. But I'm going to start by digging out some of the original emails that I exchanged with Crow Team back in 2013, September 2013. Because there's some really cool DNA of the game and the project in those emails that I think is quite interesting to see behind the scenes on. So here we go. So the first email was from Alan Ladovac, who was one of the 2 leads on the game, along with Davor Hunsky. And I'll quote you the first thing he ever said to me about the game. He wrote to me and he said, "Hello, my name is Alan, and I work at Crow Team, an indie game developer based in Croatia. You might perhaps have heard of our game series, Serious Sam, or maybe not." And then he goes on, "We've seen your work on FTL, Swapper, and Irrational." Irrational was like a little text-based philosophical logic game I did. And he says, "We like what you did on those projects, and word is you work with indies, so we thought you might be the right person for a little something we are brewing." So, 2 things strike me about this email. One is this is, I think, it's about 14 months before we released the game, and I think they've been working on it for about 2 years before this. So it's real late in the day to be approaching writers on a game. It did work out. But looking back, I rather miss the days when we wrote an entire game in 1 year instead of the sort of 3-year nightmare jobs that we have today. Not that I should complain. It was really the first time I think that anyone contacted me saying, "Hey, we played your games before, and we really like what you do. Give us that. Do what you did on those." And that's really nice. Instead of me kind of coming on and trying to be a bit corporate and then slowly bringing things around to the kind of thing I want to write, this was a really nice change. And the fact that he's like, you may have heard of us. I grew up in the 90s playing Serious Sam. It was very cool to get this contact. But I was a little bit what are the Serious Sam guys gonna have for me that's interesting? I'm not sure this is my area. But I replied saying, show me what you got.
Hi, I'm Jonas. I'm one of the writers of the game, along with Tom Joubert. I was an indie game developer before I joined Crow Team. I was making indie games quite a long time before even the term indie games really existed. So back around 2003, 2004, I made a game called The Infinite Ocean, which was a game about artificial intelligence, which kind of took a positive view of the possibilities of artificial intelligence and kind of a humanist view, and explored the concept from kind of a philosophical angle. And I released that, and then years passed, and around 2010, I remade that as a Flash game. For modern audiences, that's something like a cave painting. So Tom Joubert played that Flash game and really liked it. He was also writing games at the time, and he contacted me. We talked a little bit. We had kind of similar interests in video game writing. And then time went on, and Crow Team had played a game that Tom had worked on, the Swap. And they were looking for a writer who could bring a kind of philosophical angle to the game that they were making that was untitled at the time. And Tom thought this project is too big for just one person, and so he suggested that I could join, and he reached out to me, and I was already a fan of Crow Team, so I was like, yes, of course. And Crow Team, some people from Crow Team played The Infinite Ocean. They thought, okay, this is actually pretty interesting, pretty close to what we're doing, and so I ended up joining the team. So the character of Milton acts as a counterpoint to Elohim. You could say kind of blind faith versus blind doubt. Elohim clings to his faith to the point that he cannot actually complete his task. His desire to maintain the thing that he has created and his own place in it makes it impossible for him to actually fulfill the task that was set for him. So he is failing in a way. And Milton, in another way, is so cynical that he cannot actually construct a coherent worldview or do anything or accomplish anything or even push for someone else to accomplish something. He is quite broken in his own way. They both are. So this is interesting because sometimes we get players who think that Milton is like the message of the game or the view of the writers. And it's very important to remember that Milton is a character, just like Elohim is a character, and he can be wrong about things, and he most likely is wrong about things just as Elohim is wrong about some things. But both of them at the same time have necessary insights. That's the thing where it's not two villains or two heroes. It's two characters who understand some things and don't understand other things, and they're both stuck. They're unable to synthesize doubt and faith, to question what they're surrounded by, but at the same time construct a set of beliefs that can be acted upon. They can't find something to fight for, really, because they're both stuck in their own ways. They can't transcend, and that is your role in this equation, to be that thing that essentially unites the elements and then transcends them into something new. So when Tom and I joined the project, the design of the game mostly existed, meaning the levels were there, not in their final form, but they were there, and most of the puzzles were there as well. I remember them saying, we think that there should be some kind of tower, there will be a central tower. I think it kind of existed, but they didn't really know what it was or what it was going to look like exactly. It was still all a bit rough. Cortimore already had some notions of what the game should be about. So from the beginning, it was like, we want to do something about artificial intelligence and kind of independence of thought. But it was all kind of vague and just they had a certain ambition. They wanted to make an intelligent game, but it wasn't, worked out yet. So one of the first things that we did is Tom and I started working on some pitches. The pitch that got picked eventually is the one that I created, which is the story that you've played, more or less. I wish I remembered exactly what the other pitch was that we had. I think we might have had more than two, but I think there were two main ones. I remember something like an abandoned digital encyclopedia, sort of Microsoft Encarta, if anyone from the Stone Ages remembers that. And I, of course, had the biblical pitch because that's kind of the sort of thing that I'm interested in. But quite a lot still changed. Like once that got picked, there were still a lot of changes to how precisely it played out. But the main sort of idea of a retelling of the Garden of Eden story from a humanist angle, that stayed and really became the defining characteristic of the original Talos Principle. Alexandra Drennan was one of the first characters conceived for the game. She functions as a counterpoint to both Elohim and Milton. So in her, the extreme skeptical thinking of Milton and the extreme faith of Elohim kind of meet and transcend each other. She's a synthesis, sublation. She's not dogmatic, but she believes in humanity. So to me, she's really the heart of the game. She's the kind of universalist humanism that really is the best and most important legacy of the Enlightenment personified. And of course, she's inspired very strongly by Carl Sagan. Now, I didn't reread or rewatch anything by Carl Sagan before writing her, but I would not be surprised if there are like entire chunks of what she says that are really similar to things that Carl Sagan has written or said. I watched Cosmos on television when I was a young child, and there was such a foundational experience that it just kind of echoes in my mind since then, and I've also read a lot of his books, and all of that stuff has just kind of been absorbed, and then it kind of, comes out again in this new form. Again, transformation of things into something else is the foundation of art. An interesting fact about the writing of Alexandra Drennan is that she was rewritten after Aaron Fitzgerald was cast. So the initial version of the character was older, and it didn't fit Aaron's voice. And Aaron was really good, and she brought something interesting to the character. And instead of trying to force her to perform it differently or just finding someone else, what I did is I rewrote the character for her, changed the character's background and everything, and that really made her come alive. And Aaron just really did an amazing job with that character. And that's, to me, the collaboration with Aaron in creating Alexandra and then Athena is really one of the highlights of my career. I directed the recording session, the final recording session for Alexandra Drennan. And when you get to those last moments that are very emotional, that was exactly as emotional to listen to. And it was very, very powerful. And it was very hard to ask her for a second take, but you have to do a second take for safety. And personally, I do not care about awards or anything like that very much, but I do kind of wish that Erin's work really had been acknowledged by the industry in some form, because she did something really amazing. This is really high caliber acting, and I wish it was recognized.
In the original game, we had a hinting system using the QR codes. So what player could do? Player could go to the messenger island, solve several Tetromino Rangers and unlock the messenger, free the messenger. And then later in some of the puzzles, he would be able to call in the messenger. So he would write him down a QR code, like a bunch of text, several lines, that would try to, using the text, describe what player should be doing. So like, the textual hint that will help players to solve this puzzle. Well, in more than few occasions, it's really hard for us to write those texts because of the spatial nature of the puzzles that we, in those labyrinths, you need spatial awareness, where to position what to see some very specific angle and stuff like that. So that was extremely hard to describe using the words, and just people were pretty dissatisfied with doing so much and putting some significant effort into freeing the messenger, and then just getting some unhelpful hint that would actually not be helpful at all. So in the Reawakened, we switched to the free pass token, the system that we used in the Talos Principle 2, where you could exchange the token. You could find the tokens scattered around the puzzle clusters. And you could exchange those tokens for the Tetromino in the puzzle that you actually use it on the altar. So we were pretty certain that would be more beneficial and welcomed by the players, because it was really doing great for the Talos Principle 2, and we didn't want the players to feel the frustration from the original game.
Alexandra Drennan, the scientist that invented the simulation you're playing, is actually one of my favorite characters in the Talos Principle saga. And her recordings are very important for the story. And I wanted these recordings to feel glitched and warped, as if some sort of data loss or degradation had occurred through time. And I also wanted them to sound like they were recorded on an old analog equipment, like some sort of military-grade radio, so that would feel like a message was being sent to the player. So I added some static noise below the voice to give it this radio transmission vibe, and I also applied EQ curves and filtering what was the average human voice range and making it sound more like a broadcasted one.
So one of the reasons that the game is structured in the particular way that it is because what we're aiming to create is a form of dialectical storytelling. So I've talked in a previous recording, you may or may not have heard, about nodes and webs and threads, and so this is the way in which the information, the story content, is really distributed throughout the world of the game in kind of small chunks and structures. And what that accomplishes is that all of these kind of interact with each other in the player's mind. So they all have connections, thematic, philosophical, and so on. And some of these are connections where they reinforce each other, and in some ways they also challenge each other or undermine each other. It's not so much that it's like a black and white pro and con. They kind of exist at an angle to each other that forces you to arrange them in your head and think about how these things fit together. And you as the player then have to think, and you have to accept some and reject others and kind of try to arrange them in your head in a way that makes sense. And ultimately, you should synthesize your own set of beliefs out of these. And that is something that is uniquely possible in the video game medium because it allows us to structure information in three-dimensional space in this particular way, and it's not linear as a novel would be, for example.
We never really wanted to tell you how to use any of the mechanics. We wanted to skip the tutorials as much as possible, because they rob you of the discovery and exploration of the mechanics. The puzzles are tutorials, and they slowly teach you what is possible.
The terminals in the game play a crucial role in storytelling. They serve as a vehicle for the story. So it was very important for us to, encourage players to interact with the terminals and try to dig some hidden narrative treasures there. We wanted to signal, whether the terminal's content has been fully explored or there is something new, and we needed a clear visual and audio cue for that. We achieved this with assigning almost irritating audio prompt and the ASCII animation of the blinking eye. So during one particularly creative night shift, I recorded a close-up of my eye blinking in a movie and extracted several frames, processed them in Photoshop, converted them from the pixel art to ASCII, so it would be, appropriate to the style of the terminal. And this ended up to so-called Milton Eye. That animation became almost an iconic symbol for the game, and even made its way onto the back of our Talos Principle t-shirts. During our early prototype sessions, we were observing how players play the puzzles, and we have seen that they have some issues with the visibility of the devices. Sometimes they would not be able to spot a device in a labyrinth because the environments, the backgrounds were like noisy, busy, just like ivy or just a brick wall, and they wouldn't notice the device. That was really a problem for us because it clashed with our main design goal, and that is always to provide a seamless, enjoyable core gameplay experience. We never make any compromise with the core gameplay loops. It has to be just perfect, so the players would not fight with the devices in any way. They have just to fight and concentrate with the puzzles. Everything else has to be serving that single purpose, so that players would think only about the puzzles. So I believe it was Alan who came up with this idea to use so-called bumblebee color scheme, where we would combine yellows and blacks for the devices. That kind of assured that the devices would stand out clearly in almost any environments. Sometimes you would see yellows, sometimes blacks, it really depends, but they would stand out. And we kind of took this inspiration from real-world industries, where many tools and equipments often uses the same color scheme for better visibility. Once we have colored our devices using this bumblebee color scheme, we never had any problems. We never observed again that players have hard time finding the devices in the environments.
It's going to be a little bit hard to condense all of the themes.
So what strikes me about Croteam's initial narrative design pitch is really how good it is and how close to the final game it is. Really, all of that stuff that they had in mind before I came on made it to the final game. So full credit to Croteam on that. They really did half our jobs for us on this, and I mean, I shouldn't give them too much credit. Like, I always say half the success I've had in my career is because I picked the right games. And as soon as I saw this email, I was like, I was very lucky to receive this email. They want to do some cool things, and I can do some cool stuff with it. The graffiti is something that Croteam was always pushing pretty hard, and it was, I think, the last thing we did as writers in the whole game. I think neither of us were that keen to do it, but I actually enjoyed it once I started doing it. I did, I think, probably 2/3 of those, and it did become fun. But it's challenging when you're writing like a lot of different characters with only short little bits for each one to really capture a thing. But what Croteam knows, I think, is and they said exactly the same thing. We went through the same process on the second game. Is you need layers of narrative. You need the terminals, you need the voice, you need the graffiti. So there's always something different around the corner. That's very important in these kinds of games. The other thing I noticed is how I'd totally forgotten. It's now like more than 10 years later. I'd forgotten how much of Milton really existed before I came on. The idea of this computer terminal that's sort of psychoanalyzing you and asking you questions and reflecting your choices back at you and confusing you and so forth, that was already there. I think I certainly made it my own. I think my Milton would never agree that anything was a compelling argument for a theory. So I did make him my own, but yeah, that plan was already there. And the other thing I noticed is that quite a lot of the key stuff that Jonas did isn't in this design, funnily enough, although I think he better understood and better cohered to what Crow Team wanted to do than I did. The stuff that he did, writing Elohim and Alexandra and so forth, the voice stuff, that wasn't in the plan, and he really wanted to do that voice stuff. I really didn't. I was quite excited to be doing dialogue trees, and he brought that all himself, and you know there would be no Talos without Jonas, or certainly not as successful and heartfelt and special as it is.
So something that's pretty important to understand is that the Talos Principle is a work of art.
So I came back to Alan and I asked all the practical questions that I always have to ask. What state is the game in right now? What's the deadline? What kind of resources have we got? How much writing do you think it is? Are there any like animated characters, or is it all like text and radio stuff? All those sorts of things. And I also told him what I thought, which was, I thought this could be really fun and really cool. But I also wrote, I'll quote, the identity questions you raise are kind of similar to the ones I tackled in the Swapper, and I wouldn't want to retread old ground. This being said, if you guys are open to some adaptations, I think there are some interesting angles. For instance, if you were to take slightly Tron angle to the VR system you're exploring, i.e. text throughout the game relate to the system as a whole, explaining its function in some way, then the world can be a metaphor for just about any system you like. You could be exploring a political infrastructure and uncovering a conspiracy. You could be exploring a living AI brain slowly activating its personality circuits, though that sounds a bit GLaDOS. In fact, whatever happens, you should definitely check out, and this changed the entire course of the game. I said, whatever happens, you should definitely check out Infinite Ocean. It's a Myst-like adventure game which, frankly, tackles precisely the topics you're interested in a far more precise and subtle fashion than I think I ever could. And, of course, Infinite Ocean was the most recent release by one Jonas Girards. And here in Alan's reply, actually, I spoke too soon in the last section when I said Jonas brought everything himself, because actually this particular idea came from Crow Team. Alan wrote, by the way, we got a few more ideas today. We thought that reaching the last part of the game, the Nexus Tower, could be presented differently. Maybe the person behind the terminals or the messages or even some voices, whatever we think works best, warns you that you must under no conditions ever go to the Nexus. We could try to present the thing the way Original Sin is presented. So think about it this way. You are an AI who is being tested for his mental capabilities, but you turn out to have also empathy and free will. It can appear as if the Nexus is the tree of life. You should listen and not go there, but you cannot resist the temptation. But in the end, is that really the will of the Creator? I mean, did God put the tree there because he wanted to test Adam and Eve and their obedience? Or if having their own free will was actually the final test, whether they are ready for life in the real world? So perhaps this simulation is a world where AIs are tested for both mental abilities and free will. It may appear as if free will is a negative characteristic, but in the end, maybe you realize that is the point. All the previous AIs have failed because they obeyed. They were not human enough to succumb to temptation. And then he says, but seriously, if you come up with the idea that the player should be a dwarf in an enchanted castle trying to get out, whatever, as long as it works, okay? So we go on to shoot around some ideas back and forth. And one thing that sticks out to me is at one point I say we should be careful with images like someone holding up a bright red rose. Cliche alert. And actually, I think the cat is better. And Alan replies saying, yeah, that's probably better. And a cat can be more interestingly made a central motif. It is live, moves and makes sounds. It's interactive and cute. We could make a cat in a cage the central point of the nexus and the final goal. Now this bloody cat idea. I mean, it was on all the posters and it's marvelous. And there was a lot of back and forth and ideas around how much the cat is in the game and how central to the game it is. But I'm glad it made it through in some shape or other. So after a bunch more back and forth, I come back with my proposal. I say what I'd like to suggest is this. I still think that Jonas Karatzis, who did Infinite Ocean, which I linked previously, would be perfect for this gig. He's based in Germany, so closer to you than I am, and I expect he would be up for it. What I wonder is whether you would be open to either taking on Jonas for the role, or if he was up for it, taking on both of us as a writing team. I've never worked with him personally, but based on his work alone, I couldn't think of anyone better. Now, that's probably the smartest thing I've ever written in my entire career. What was going through my mind at the time was, like, I've just done the Swapper, which is another abstract puzzle game with a philosophical narrative, and I really, at the time, I still do, I keep trying to do smaller things, more carefully crafted, minimalist things, partly because I'm bloody ADHD, and, like, my attention does not stick for long enough to do these big projects. So I was a bit nervous about taking on another big abstract philosophical puzzle game, and I wanted to share the load. And I had just played Jonas's game, and I really did think he'd be perfect. The rest, as they say, is history.
At one point, we reached
welcome to the temple. So you've progressed pretty far by now, and it's time to reveal something about the temple music. So the three massive temples in the game, they actually serve as a central hub for players to reach these small islands with puzzles. And I wanted these temples to evoke some sort of ancient divinity, some sense of awe and wonder. So I incorporated elements of sacred music into the tunes that are played here. You can probably hear the sound of church organs, choirs, chants, along with melodies, and it's all kind of rooted in this traditional European religious music. And it all contributes to the immersive atmosphere of these temples.
Nearly everything on this planet, from the surface of the Earth to the composition of the atmosphere itself, has been shaped by life. It's a process that takes millions of years. But we humans, with our technology, with our understanding and manipulation of systems, have changed everything in just a few centuries. I think that's also part of what makes us human. We reshape the world in our image. It's how we create ourselves and how we destroy ourselves.
Welcome to the temple. So you've progressed pretty far by now, and it's time to reveal something about the temple music. So the three massive temples in the game, they actually serve as a central hub for players to reach these small islands with puzzles. And I wanted these temples to evoke some sort of ancient divinity, some sense of awe and wonder. So I incorporated elements of sacred music into the tunes that are played here. You can probably hear the sound of church organs, choirs, chants, along with melodies, and it's all kind of rooted in this traditional European religious music. And it all contributes to the immersive atmosphere of these temples.
Cannot detect location of primary subject. Query. Query. Query.
Is there anything that we associate more closely with intelligence than curiosity? Every intelligent species on Earth is attracted by the unknown. Our mythologies are full of riddles and mysteries and divine knowledge. Even the word apocalypse means revelation. It seems like our ancestors always imagined that even at the very end, we would solve one last mystery. My best friend died today. In the abstract, a human death is nothing, of course. An insignificant blip in a sea of billions. But the world is not abstract. Reality is always specific, painfully so. And that one specific human being who existed only once in all of the infinity of time and space, that human being was my friend. But he's not coming back, no matter how much I want him to. So, all I can do in the end is keep working, because that specificity, that uniqueness of people, of real people, is worth preserving. I look in the mirror sometimes and I see myself like some alien being. I think, who am I? Why do I have these eyes and those hands? Why do I see the colors that I see? Why do I think like I think? I did not choose to exist. I was created. Every single part of my body, every strand of my DNA is part of a story that stretches back billions of years. I exist only because of the choices and sacrifices made by so many others, but I don't know who they are. And what effect will my choices have on those who come after me? Maybe that's what it means to be human. Every species is part of the story, but we're the only ones who know that.